Hey, this is Max with Guitar Center. We're here at Winter NAMM 2025, and we just stopped by the Marshall booth, and we're hanging out with Steve. Steve, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. I'm losing my voice a little, so.
Well, it's the last day. That's bound to happen. Pretty big NAMM for you guys, huh?
It is. We're back. Marshall are back, and probably the biggest booth we've ever had, from what I remember anyway, so.
Yeah, I think just, as long as I remember, this is probably the most, really big launches you guys have done in a long, long time.
Yeah, and we wanted to make sure we came back with some products that were kind of historic and important to the guitar community.
Yeah, nice. And so with that in mind, we've got some pretty historic amps right behind you. We've got a 1959 and a JCM800 2203. They look a little different than usual, maybe not stock. You want to tell us a little bit about what's going on here?
Yeah, so we've just launched our Modified series. So what that basically means is we've, take the classic amps, do some of the mods that people are getting done typically, and also kind of giving people the sound that they expect a Marshall to sound like, and that sometimes the stock amps didn't, if that makes sense. But we do have kind of a rich history in modding amps, really. We have been doing that, but it's kind of always been behind the scenes and just for artists.
Well, that's kind of how the company started, really, right? It was Jim's music store, and musicians would come in and they'd say, hey, can you do this? And then he tried to do it, and they did it, right? It's kind of the legacy of the company. Yeah,
exactly. Like I say, they were always listening to the players coming into the store. They wanted more of this, more of that. They'd listen, they'd react. So, yeah.
And thus the half stack was born, or maybe the full stack. I don't know.
Yeah.
Either way, some amount of stacking. So let's dig in here. What are the mods we've actually got going on?
First thing we added was a master volume. For anybody that's ever played a 100-watt Plexi, these are non-master volume usually. And until you start to turn the thing up, it's completely clean. You don't get any gain. Clean and bright. So we wanted to make the amp more usable, but kind of retain the sound, if you like. So the master volume is actually a pre-tone stack master volume, which kind of makes it sound really fat at lower volumes. I mean, the fact that, as you'll hear in a minute, we're sat next to this and we're still getting gain at kind of talking level is ridiculous, because usually you got no chance on a regular 1959.
Right.
So that's the first thing we added. We've got a bright cap switch also, which allows you to remove the bright cap, which is kind of redundant when you gain the thing up, because on any Plexi, the more you turn the level of the channel up, which is essentially like a gain control also, the bright cap would be blended out of the signal anyway. But for the guys who are not playing kind of with the harder rock tones, kind of more towards the sweeter, kind of bluesier, crunchier tones, the bright cap sometimes used to be a little bit brash, so players used to actually remove the bright cap. So that's now on a switch, which is super useful. And then gain, there's a gain switch, which is kind of what a lot of players want from these things. That's the sort of second switch along. So there's a bypass switch, so again, when it's off, it's standard Plexi. You can turn it on, which then moves you over to the third switch, which gives you two styles of overdrive. So you got kind of clip in one, which kind of tightens the bass, rounds off a little bit the highs, gives you that kind of woody mid-range tone. Kind of similar-ish to if you use like a classic overdrive pedal in the front, just gives you that little bit extra. And then the second mode is like a transistor-based overdrive. You get a slight volume dip, which doesn't matter too much with this style of amp, because you can just turn the volume up anyway. But what that does, because it's compressing more, it's giving you more overdrive, it's kind of the highest gain setting on the amp. But it retains the lows and the highs. It doesn't change it as much as overdrive one would do.
All right, so before we start hearing them, could you give us kind of just a baseline of classic Plexi sound?
Yeah. So what I'll do is just make sure everything's off. That's the kind of typical.
Yeah, so cleans up really nice, kind of right on the edge, digging a little more, and there you go.
Yeah, that's it. And again, the bright cap switch, it's kind of, I've got the volume cranked, believe it or not, showing the master volume is very effective. But if I turn the actual channel volume down, it gives you that kind of cleaner kind of sound, but then bright.
Yeah,
makes a huge difference. Yeah. So again, I'll leave that on like a standard Plexi. But like I say, the fun part is if you get the volume control or the gain control, essentially, to the point where you like it, kind of. If you want that little bit extra, then you can engage the overdrive switch. And what that's kind of doing is kind of like I say, it's tightening the lows a little bit as well. So yeah, if you want that little bit more, you can add the OD switch in. So again, you can take you from that to, which is kind of a little bit more gain. But again, it's like I said earlier, it's kind of tightening the lows, bringing in the highs a little bit. But you got option 2, which gives you the extra gain. So you get your and that's the kind of the bag of that. So
nice. And so I know this might sound like a silly question. There's master volume. Is that fully bypassable?
When it's up fully, you're on full on 100 watts.
Nice.
Which I don't think we're doing here.
No, I don't think so. That's too close for comfort.
We've got it at a really low level as well. Like I say, it's kind of talking volume, which is kind of unheard of with a Plexi. So
it sounds fantastic, nice and flexible. Give us just maybe a little longer demo, Nice.
Cool.
It's kind of like a Plexi, you might call it.
We're going to use that.
We should copyright that, trademark it, whatever it is. Yeah. It won't come expensive, don't worry. Nice. So let's take a look at the JCM800 there.
Yeah, I mean, again, probably the other most iconic Marshall amp, one of the most recorded, especially when you're in the world of rock and roll. And probably one of the most modified Marshalls, obviously. So again, it can be bone stock. There's a JCM800 with this if you don't want to use any of the mods. But the first thing we added was this 3-way toggle switch, which allows you to add extra gain. And again, there's 2 stages of that, so you can have gain or even more gain, if that makes sense. There's a tight switch as well, which allows you to kind of tighten the bass response, which is really useful if you add in all that extra gain. Sometimes things can get a little bit flubby. And then a mid-boost switch as well, so if you want to kind of change the character of the whole amplifier and have it more kind of mid-focused, that's a useful switch too. So yeah. So apart from that, it's a regular 800. And actually, the interesting thing with all the modifieds, actually, they're kind of just built as the regular amp and then modified in-house.
Jumpered or swapped accordingly, essentially. Nice. Yeah. So, question: when we're adding gain here, what are we doing in this amps?
It's basically the way the gain stages are being clipped in the valve stage. So it's not actually clipping diodes or anything like that. It's actually using the current valves. But yeah, without getting kind of too techie, because I'm not one of the engineers, it's kind of adding additional gain within the tube.
Just pushing them a little differently.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you want to give us a little bit of baseline what the stock will sound like?
Again, so this is the stock kind of that typical 800 kind of sound right there. Yeah. And what I'll do first is I'll go to overdrive 1. So it already becomes a little more hairy right there.
But to me, that's the sound that you hear in a lot of records. That's very, very close.
That's a good point, because again, a lot of people plug into a regular 800 and they go, oh, where's all the gain?
Right.
Because most players, as you're probably already aware, were probably pushing in with something like a Tube Scream or an SD1 or something at the time.
That sounds just like, when you think of JCM800, when you think of those 80s, early 90s harder rock sound, that's much closer to that recorded sound that I'm thinking of.
Yeah, exactly. And we wanted people to kind of get that straight out of the box without kind of thinking, well, okay, I need to go and buy a pedal now. I've bought this amp, so yeah. So that was overdrive 1. If you need a little more gain than that, then you can go to number 2. So. So again, it adds more gain, but actually as I'm playing the guitar with this mode, it's a little more comfortable to play. There's a little compression there. It's a little easier on the fingers. So that's the overdrive stages. Once you've added that amount of gain, you might want to kind of, again, tweak the low end. So as I've added the gain, it's kind of got a little bit more boomy, which some people may like. With a tight switch,
it really shapes it there.
Yeah. And then again, another tone shaper is the mid boost switch. Like I say, if you want the amp to become more mid focused, you can engage the mid switch. That's your mid switch. Again, that really makes you kind of cut through the mix as well.
So, all important question. Everyone's going to ask this in the comments. Where are these made?
The UK, in the Marshall factory in Bletchley, Milton Keynes.
Very nice. So the 59, just as it always was, hand wired, and that made as it always was.
Yeah, hand wired, hand built, but it's PCB mounted like the 800s always were. So yeah.
Nice. Okay. And how soon are we expecting these?
You'll be getting these this year, but probably more towards the summer.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, if you want to learn more about the new Marshall Modified, the 1959 hand wired, or the JCM800 model, head to guitarcenter.com, and for all the latest new from NAMM, stay tuned to GC's YouTube channel. Steve, you want to play us out?
Yeah, sure.
Nice.